May 10th, 1940. France woke to the sound of engines, not the gentle hum of morning traffic, but the thunder of invasion. Across the skies, German bombers roared toward the frontier, tanks massed along the Ardennes, a region the French believed was impenetrable. Within hours, that illusion would burn. For 2 decades, France had lived behind walls of concrete, the mighty Maginot Line, confident that no enemy could pass. Politicians promised safety, generals promised preparation. But what they didn't know was that the enemy had rewritten the rules of war. Hitler's generals had crafted a plan so daring, so unthinkable, that it defied every expectation. It would turn the impossible into inevitability and bring one of the world's proudest armies to its knees in just 46 days. This is the story of how France, the victor of the Great War, fell faster than anyone thought possible. A story of arrogance, surprise, betrayal, and collapse. Because the battle for France didn't just reshape Europe, it proved a terrifying truth. No wall, no army, and no empire is untouchable. After World War I, France vowed never again to bleed as it had at Verdun. So instead of preparing to move, it prepared to hide. Along its eastern border rose the Maginot Line, miles of steel, concrete, and confidence. Behind those walls, France felt untouchable. The generals called it a masterpiece. The people called it safety. But safety was an illusion. France had built a fortress for the last war, not the next one. While the French dug in, Germany was learning to move. New generals, Guderian, Manstein, Rommel, studied speed. They called it Blitzkrieg, lightning war. To them, the Maginot Line wasn't a wall, it was bait. When Hitler rose to power, France hesitated. He rearmed the Rhineland. No response. He took Austria. Silence. He devoured Czechoslovakia. Only words. Every time, France blinked, and Hitler grew bolder. The Maginot Line stopped at the Ardennes. A dense forest, steep hills, narrow roads. French commanders laughed at the idea of tanks crossing it. No army can pass through there, they said. But in the spring of 1940, deep in those woods, German engines were already warming up. An entire army waited for the signal. As France stared east toward its wall of concrete, the real storm gathered in the trees behind it. May 10th, 1940. At dawn, the sky over Belgium erupted in fire. German bombers struck airfields and bridges. Paratroopers seized crossings before defenders could react. The Allies rushed north to meet the invasion, exactly as Hitler planned, because the attack on Belgium was a decoy. The real strike was moving through the Ardennes. Thousands of German tanks and trucks rolled through the forests, emerging behind French lines faster than anyone thought possible. It wasn't just speed, it was coordination. Planes, armor, infantry, all moving like one machine. By May 13th, they reached Sedan. French defenses crumbled in hours. Commanders refused to believe their reports. How could tanks move through the forest that fast? They still thought in kilometers per day. The Germans moved in kilometers per hour. Civilians fled in panic, millions of them. The roads turned into rivers of chaos. When the Stukas came screaming down, there was nowhere to run. In Paris, panic spread faster than orders. The generals argued, the government stalled, and communication collapsed. On May 15th, German forces broke through to the open plains. One French general radioed headquarters. The front is collapsing, there are no reserves, nothing in 10 days. The Germans reached the sea. The best Allied armies were trapped in a shrinking pocket near Dunkirk. France had built the strongest wall in Europe, but forgot how to fight beyond it. By late May, the map of France was a disaster. German forces sliced the country in half, north trapped, south exposed. Every hour brought news of another defeat. Refugees clogged every road. Families pushing carts, soldiers retreating, smoke rising behind them. Pilots above wrote, "The road to Paris is not a road anymore. It's a grave." Inside the French High Command, disbelief turned to despair. Generals who once spoke of honor now whispered of surrender. Meanwhile, Hitler's army didn't slow. They raced toward the Channel, cutting off British and French troops. At Dunkirk, the Allies made their last stand, a desperate escape under fire. That would decide the fate of the war. But for France itself, the line was already broken. Defenses collapsed faster than orders could be given. Every strong point was outflanked before it could fight. It wasn't courage they lacked, it was coordination. By June, the Germans were unstoppable. Their columns rolled toward Paris like a black tide, and the French army, once proud, once feared, was crumbling in disbelief. In 6 weeks, the invincible fortress of Europe was bleeding out. France had not been beaten by numbers. June 1940, the German army was closing in. Trains jammed with refugees fled south. The government packed its gold reserves and left Paris. The capital trembled, not yet conquered, but already defeated. The Luftwaffe bombed bridges and factories. The sky turned gray with smoke. Posters called for calm, but everyone knew the truth. Marshal Philippe Pétain, hero of Verdun, now urged surrender. Others begged to fight on, but France was out of time. Discipline collapsed, units dissolved, and whole divisions vanished into the chaos. On June 14th, German troops entered Paris. No shots fired, no resistance, only silence. The Eiffel Tower stood under the swastika. French civilians watched from windows as tanks rolled past cafes where life had stopped. Across the Channel, Churchill watched in disbelief. He had pleaded for France to fight on, even offered union between their nations. But it was too late. On June 22nd, France signed an armistice. Half the country was occupied. The rest became Vichy. The Republic was dead. Days later, Hitler visited Paris. He stood before the Eiffel Tower, smiling for photographers. His revenge for 1918 was complete. In just 46 days, France, where the pride of Europe, had fallen. But this was not the end. As France fell into silence, a new voice rose across the Channel, a voice that refused surrender. That voice belonged to Charles de Gaulle. And even as Europe burned, one question began to haunt the world. Why did Hitler stop? Why, and when victory was within his grasp, did he let the British army escape at Dunkirk? That is where our story continues. So if you've been drawn into this forgotten moment of history, don't let it fade like this video. Follow the channel, because next time, we uncover the decision that could have changed the entire war. Why Hitler stopped at Dunkirk, coming next.